Stories never heard before. Wings of Courage. In the heart of a sprawling meadow, where tall grasses swayed like dancers in the wind, and wild flowers painted the earth with colors of resilience, lived a small sparrow named Anaya. She was not the largest bird, nor the swiftest, nor the most dazzling in plumage. Yet within her tiny frame, beat a heart that carried the weight of courage, a spirit that refused to bow to despair, and a will that embodied recovery, after every storm. Anaya had built her nest in the crook of an old banyan tree. Its branches stretched wide like arms of wisdom, sheltering countless creatures beneath its shade. The nest was woven with strands of grass, twigs, and feathers, each piece chosen with care, each layer a testament to her persistence. Inside lay her children, 3 fragile chicks whose eyes had only just begun to open, to the world. Their chirps were soft, like whispers of hope, and their hunger was endless, reminding Anaya that her life was no longer her own. Every beat of her wings was now for them. But life in the meadow was not gentle. Predators prowled, storms raged, and hunger often tested the limits of survival. Anaya had endured many hardships before, but nothing compared to the trial that awaited her, a trial that would demand every ounce of her courage, resilience, and capacity to recover. It began with shadows. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of amber and crimson, Anaya noticed a hawk circling above. Its wings stretched wide, slicing through the air with predatory grace. The hawk's eyes were sharp, scanning the meadow for prey. Anaya's heart trembled, for she knew that hawks did not merely hunt, they conquered. And her chicks, still featherless and weak, were vulnerable. The banyan tree had always been a fortress, but even fortresses could be breached. Anaya perched at the edge of her nest, her body tense, her gaze fixed on the predator. She could feel the fear rising like a tide, threatening to drown her resolve. Yet alongside fear, came a surge of determination. She whispered to herself, "I am small, but my love is vast. I am fragile, but my spirit is unbreakable. I will not let harm touch my children." That night, as if nature conspired to test her further, dark clouds gathered. Thunder roared across the meadow, and rain lashed against the banyan tree. The nest shook under the weight of the storm, and the chicks huddled together, their tiny bodies trembling. Anaya spread her wings wide, covering them, shielding them from the cold and the wet. Her feathers soaked, her body shivered, but she did not move. She became a living wall, a barrier between her children and the chaos outside. The hawk did not strike that night, but Anaya knew it was waiting. Predators were patient. They circled until weakness revealed itself. And storms, too, had a way of breaking spirits. Yet Anaya refused to break. She endured the storm, whispering lullabies to her chicks, songs of courage that rose above the thunder. Each note was a promise: you will live. You will grow. You will fly. The next morning dawned clear, but danger was near. The hawk returned, swooping lower, its shadow falling across the banyan tree. Anaya's heart raced. She could flee, abandon the nest, and save herself. Many sparrows did when faced with such odds. But Anaya's wings did not move. She stood firm, her body trembling yet unyielding. The hawk descended, talons gleaming, eyes locked on the nest. Anaya launched herself into the air, her small wings beating furiously. She darted toward the predator, chirping loudly, a cry that was both defiance and plea. The hawk was startled, not by her strength, but by her audacity. How could such a small creature dare to challenge it? Anaya swooped and struck, pecking at the hawk's wings, diving at its eyes. She was no match in size or power, but she wielded something greater, the courage born of love. The hawk swerved, annoyed, then enraged. It clawed at her, tearing a feather from her wing. Pain seared through her, but she did not retreat. She fought with desperation, each strike a declaration: "You will not touch my children." The hawk's talons grazed Anaya's wing, leaving a streak of pain that burned like fire. She faltered for a moment, her small body spinning in the air. The hawk seized the chance, diving closer to the nest. The chicks cried out, their voices trembling with fear. Anaya's heart nearly broke at the sound. She felt the weight of her weakness pressing down, whispering that she was too small, too fragile, too powerless. For a fleeting moment, despair clawed at her spirit. But then she remembered the storm, the night she had stood unmoving, wings spread wide, shielding her children from the rain. She remembered the lullabies she had sung, the promises she had made. Courage was not the absence of fear, it was the refusal to surrender to it. With a cry that pierced the meadow, Anaya rose again. Her wings beat with renewed fury, her body darting like a streak of determination. She struck the hawk's face, forcing it to recoil. The predator hissed, enraged, but Anaya did not relent. The battle stretched into moments that felt like eternity. Anaya's feathers were torn, her body bruised, but her spirit blazed brighter with each strike. She was not fighting for victory, she was fighting for survival, for the fragile lives that depended on her. The hawk, frustrated by her relentless defiance, began to falter. It had expected an easy conquest, not a war of endurance. Anaya's resilience became her weapon. Every time she was struck down, she rose again. Every time pain seared through her, she turned it into strength. Finally, with a furious screech, the hawk withdrew. It soared upward, circling once more, but then vanished into the horizon. The meadow fell silent, save for the trembling chirps of the chicks. Anaya returned to the nest, her body battered, but her spirit triumphant. She nestled close to her children, whispering softly, "You are safe. You are alive. And you will grow strong." Days passed, and the wounds on Anaya's wings began to heal. Her feathers regrew, her strength returned. The chicks, too, grew stronger, their wings stretching wider, their voices louder. They watched their mother with awe, sensing the story written in her scars. Anaya did not hide her pain from them. She showed them the torn feathers, the marks of battle, the evidence of struggle. But she also showed them recovery, the way wounds closed, the way strength returned, the way resilience transformed suffering into triumph. Her children learned that courage was not about being fearless, but about standing firm even when fear threatened to consume you. They learned that resilience was not about avoiding hardship, but about rising again after every fall. And they learned that recovery was not about erasing scars, but about wearing them as proof of survival. As the chicks grew into fledglings, ready to test their wings, Anaya perched at the edge of the nest and watched them. She knew they would face storms, predators, and trials of their own. She could not shield them forever. But she had given them something greater than protection, she had given them a legacy of courage, resilience, and recovery. When they took flight for the first time, their wings beating against the sky, Anaya felt a surge of pride. They were not just sparrows, they were survivors, inheritors of a spirit that refused to break. And in the meadow, where the banyan tree stood tall, and the grasses swayed in the wind, the story of the sparrow who protected her children became a silent anthem, a reminder that even the smallest creature can embody the greatest strength. Seasons changed, and the meadow carried whispers of Anaya's defiance. The banyan tree, ancient and wise, seemed to hold her story in its roots. The grasses swayed with reverence, and the wildflowers bloomed brighter, as if honoring the sparrow who had stood against the storm and the predator. Other sparrows began to notice. They saw how Anaya, though scarred, flew with dignity. They saw how her children thrived, their wings strong, their songs vibrant. And they began to believe that courage was not measured by size, but by spirit. Her story spread quietly, not through words but through example. When storms came, sparrows remembered how Anaya had shielded her chicks. When hawks circled, they remembered how she had fought with unyielding love. And when despair threatened, they remembered how she had risen again, scarred but unbroken. Anaya herself changed. She was no longer the same sparrow who had once trembled at shadows. Her scars became symbols of strength, her wounds became reminders of survival. She no longer feared storms, for she had endured their fury. She no longer feared predators, for she had faced their talons. Most importantly, she no longer feared her own weakness. She had discovered that weakness was not the end, it was the beginning of resilience. Each time she had faltered, she had risen stronger. Each time she had been struck, she had recovered with deeper resolve. Her children saw this transformation. They learned that recovery was not about returning to what was lost, but about becoming something greater. They learned that scars were not marks of defeat, but emblems of victory. And they carried these lessons into their own flights. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of gold, Anaya perched on the banyan tree, and watched her fledglings soar across the meadow. Their wings caught the light, their voices filled the air. She felt a quiet peace settle within her. She realized that her story was not just about protecting her children. It was about embodying the truth that even the smallest creature could rise against overwhelming odds. It was about showing that courage is born of love, resilience is forged in struggle, and recovery is the triumph of the spirit over pain. Her life had become a living parable, a story of courage, resilience, and recovery. And though she was only a sparrow, her silent valor echoed across the meadow, across the skies, across the hearts of those who witnessed it. The sparrow's journey reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Resilience is not the avoidance of hardship, but the strength to rise again after every fall. And recovery is not the erasure of scars, but the transformation of wounds into wisdom. Anaya's story is not just the tale of a bird, it is the anthem of every soul who has faced storms, predators, and despair, yet chosen to stand, to fight, and to heal. It is the reminder that within even the smallest heart, lies the power to protect, to endure, and to recover. And so, the meadow remembers. The banyan tree remembers. The sparrows remember. And we, too, are invited to remember, that courage, resilience, and recovery are not distant ideals, but living truths, waiting to be embodied in our own lives. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of resilience.